familiar with the Kenton County Historical Society, welcome. This is going to be our last presentation of the season. We will resume in the fall, maybe in person, but if you're interested in the society, we have a website you can go to and get information about how to join, our publications that are offered for sale, and other things about us. So we encourage you to do so. So on behalf of our president and vice president and John Bowe, we invite you to do that, and we thank you for attending. Because I've taken up so much time already with the delays and all that, I'm going to be very brief about Diane, because most of you seem to pretty well know her pretty much already. As you know, she's principally now doing harp work for therapeutic harp work, I think is the best way to describe it. But I was also interested to see that she has a JD. So she's a member of my club too.
Okay, I didn't know that, Arnold, about you.
Yeah. One quick story I just have to tell. Number one, I was an avid fan of the Seckatary Hawkins books. I did not know until got involved with Diane how prolific a writer he was. Mr. Schulkers was, though, because the Covington Library only had a few of his books, but I was very familiar with those. And so one day about a year ago, I was driving around somewhere for some reason and crossed over the Banklick Creek. And I recalled stories from the Seckatary Hawkins books about those boys swimming in Banklick Creek. Well,
John Bowe.
Yeah, that popped into my head.
Programs going on now, about Seckatary Hawkins, if you're interested, Terry, if you're not busy. Zoom program.
Well,
I didn't notice that. Okay.
John, mute, please.
Oh, bye.
John, mute, please.
Mute, okay. Our treasurer, Terry, is...
So anyway, I got back from that drive, whatever it was, and lo and behold, I found an email from Diane asking whether we would be interested in a program about Seckatary Hawkins. And so it was sort of written in the stars that we were going to have this this meeting. So I'll ask all of you to mute yourselves, because we don't want any extraneous noise while Diane is speaking. So I will do that myself right now and let Diane take it away.
Well, thank you, Arnold. I want to thank Arnold Taylor and John Bowe and the members of the Kenton County Historical Society for their interest in Seckatary. And he is was a wonderful citizen of Northern Kentucky and very worthy of your interest. And I also want to say that the little story Arnold told when we were first communicating reminded me that Banklick Creek was one of the few places that in the stories actually was called by the name that it still is called by. You know, Robert Schulkers used different names to refer to the town he lived in and Cincinnati and different places, but Banklick Creek was always Banklick Creek in the stories and still is today. So I was really pleased that Arnold already knew something about Seckatary. And my talk today is actually I'm going to make use of slides that Randy put together with an emphasis. The slides have an emphasis upon the major role that Harper Lee has played in the life of the Seckatary books, especially the influence that the books had upon her writing her great American novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. I really expected I would mainly be speaking to members of the Historical Society today who didn't really know too much about Seckatary. So for those of our own members or others of you who've already done this kind of research, you're already going to be familiar with a lot of what I'm saying. But anyway, as I mentioned, I think it'll be good to have a review of these interesting letters that Harper Lee wrote, some of the correspondence between Randy and Harper over the years. So I think we all know that Robert Schulkers was a very significant local boy. grew up in a humble setting, but a lovely, warm, and friendly and loving family on 13th Street in Covington. And my own connection is that I am, Robert Schulkers was my great uncle. We always refer to him as Uncle Bob in our family. My mother's father, Giles, was the son, one of the two sons, of Seckatary's sister, Wilhelmina, or Minnie. We knew her as Grandma Minnie. She was my great-grandmother. But I grew up with the books that Robert Schulkers had given my mom, Mary. My mother, by the way, is 95, and she's doing great, and she still has many stories about Seckatary and about how much she loved Robert as she was growing up. So that's just a little bit about us. I think I'm going to move on to getting into the slides here. Let's see. Okay. And so this first one, the only correspondence that Harper Lee actually had with Seckatary himself was in these these dedications that she wrote to him in the books. And I think Randy told me there was a little bit of other correspondence, but unfortunately he never did meet her. Robert Schulkers himself did not meet Harper. But here she is dedicated this book to Robert F. Schulkers, who gave me so many happy hours with Seckatary Hawkins and Stoner's Boy. And she signs it with this iconic a little insignia that we all use now: yours, fair and square. Fair, the sun shining, and square. That was our contribution from Harper, who became a member of the club many years before she died. She just died a few years ago, and Randy and all of us now use yours, fair and square. This little insignia. We have a little picture here of a mockingbird. Okay. And this was a letter from February in '01. And I'll just read some of these that I can in case you can't see them too well. Dear Randy, my brother, way ahead of me in years, left me when he became a teenager a rather stunning collection of adventure books, etc., nearly all the Stratmeyer pseudonyms, which would have been the Nancy Drews and the Hardy Boys and that kind of thing, for instance, but my favorites were The Gray Ghost and Stoner's Boy, quite different from the Rover Boys. This was so long ago that it is ancient history. And best, Harper. And then, as I think and hope most of you know, as we say here, to illustrate her admiration, she used direct quotes from some of the books to end To Kill a Mockingbird. And it's true, I think Randy wrote this in here, most readers missed it. I have talked to so many people in my work here. I'm the local representative for our club, and many people have not only no idea that Harper Lee was influenced by Seckatary's writings, but they do not have any idea that the books are actually quoted from and referred to in the end of To Kill a Mockingbird. So we have the little quote here. If you just take your copy of To Kill a Mockingbird and look at the last couple of pages, I'm sure most of us have already done this. And I think this is just a little description here of Harper always recommended that boys and girls should read her two favorite Seckatary Hawkins books just to see if they like them. And Randy and I, all of us, I give talks at the libraries periodically. We're really trying to improve literacy by getting kids to read the books is from the library. And our library actually has these books, some of the Seckatary books, in circulation. I remember a few years ago finding a number of the more rare books were actually in circulation at the Kenton County Public Library. And I think maybe at that time they were not even aware that they had some pretty valuable books. You know, if you don't return a book, they'll charge you $20 or something. Well, it would have been worth that to keep some of the Seckatary books. I never did that. I just want you to know. Here's a lovely picture of Uncle Bob as a young man, and one of the promotional flyers. And another dedication here. Harper tells the story that her brother had a number of the Seckatary Hawkins books, which Edwin would lend to her, or maybe she would steal them, and she says she would read them under the covers at night. So it was really her brother, I guess, who got her on the path. And here she says to Randy, never say die. I haven't been in Monroeville for months. That was her hometown in Alabama. And I am still not, but hope to be soon. My memory fails with age, but I think I recall Three Finger Fred's ink blot signature somewhere in an illustration. Was it in one of the above? That's how the gang, sorry, he'd been prowling around the clubhouse. It was probably in the Gray Ghost. Oops, sorry. Oh, gosh. And I simply can't remember if it's somewhere else. Would you please enlighten me? Sincerely, Harper. So as you know, as most of you, I think, who are here today know, the books, when they became very famous and very popular, were carried by over 100 newspapers, and not only the weekly serialized accounts, chapters from the books, but in the form of comics. And our club produced two really beautiful volumes of the various comics some years ago. So it is a lot of fun to read them with the illustrations, the comic illustrations. To Randy Schulkers, keeper of the Seckatary's inkwell, with the best wishes of Harper. And I think this is representing the set of the original first 11 books. Highly collectible now, and all of us really enjoy that searching for books to fulfill our collection. And this one on the end, The Ghost of Lake Tappahoe, which was he used Indian Lake as the model for Lake Tappahoe. Fascinating story, really scary, great mystery story. It was given as a prize by the Purina Company in a paperback format. So therefore, there are very few of these paperback copies with the dust covers still extant. I was over at the Ohio bookstore some years back, and they've got some prized copy of it, and I think they wanted $2,000 for their paperback copy of The Ghost of Lake Tappahoe. Now, our club put out unabridged copies of all of these books at some point over the last, I guess, 20 years now. Randy could correct me. And we have The Ghost of Lake Tappahoe in a beautiful edition. And many of the chapters were added. Our club was able to add the chapters that had been removed during wartime printings, when paper was, there were shortages, and therefore editing was with a hot knife. So that is really something we are proud of, that the club had this major project where we produced the unabridged versions and were able to recapture the missing chapters that had not been in the original 11 books, as well as put out quite a few other books that had never seen the light of day as books. They had only been serialized, And Randy had these original newspaper copies from the original serialized versions. And a number of our other club members in the past worked on those manuscripts from the crumbling newspaper copies, retyping them for this generation where we had to digitize everything in order to reprint those. That was a very laborious work, but part of the legacy, part of the Schulkers family legacy, and I'm very proud to be part of our family. By the way, the two little bookends there, we actually had Rookwood Pottery did bookends of Seckatary, and those probably are Rookwood. I think other companies put some of those out, and then also I think Randy had these little reproductions made at some point within the last 20 years, and some of us were able to buy copies of these little Seckatary full color, and I've got my set of bookends, Seckatary bookends, downstairs with my books. So just a kind of a fun little merchandising item. In fact, Robert Schulkers was also very farsighted in that he was involved in merchandising as, I mean, nowadays it's an absolute career that people have all kinds of merch, they call it, that they sell at their concerts and that kind of thing. But back in the day, something like these bookends would have been merch, I guess. And I've also got a copy here of another piece of merchandising memorabilia. This is a reproduction that we've made. Yes, we have Seckatary Hawkins books, the best boy stories ever written. Ask to see them, with a nice full color picture of Seck. And it stands on it's a little standee. So many of you already have these. And I thought Uncle Bob was pretty smart in trying to market his books without the internet, without the help of anything like that. And I know he drove cross country with the books in the back of his car, sort of like I do. I drive all around with harps in the back of my car, and I get very tired of hauling harps. But I know that Uncle Bob drove around with the books, going to different bookstores and marketing the books. So he was pretty early into getting some of the marketing and merchandising ideas out there too, I think. Okay, so back to Harper. A little explanation here about the title, To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a sin to kill a mockingbird. That was the only time I ever heard Atticus say it was a sin to do something. And I asked Miss Maudie about it. Your father's right, she said. Mockingbirds don't do one thing but make music for us to enjoy. They don't eat up people's gardens. They don't nest in corn cribs. They don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us. That's why it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. One of Harper's closest friends in her earlier years was Truman Capote, sorry. And he was a neighbor that she hung out with, played with when she was younger. And it says that they did act out their favorite stories. They wrote little plays. They acted out other plays. Apparently, from what I have read, Truman Capote, he praised To Kill a Mockingbird when it first came out. However, when it became very famous and she was beginning to win awards for it, he allowed the friendship to cool, and people seemed to think that he was feeling a bit slighted at that time. So I think their friendship became more and more distant. And here are some pictures of Harper at some different times. She was a bit of a recluse, or considered to be. The world expected, of course, another novel from her after To Kill a Mockingbird was such a blockbuster. But she often said that she would not write another book. Ultimately, we know that her other manuscript did get published, but she didn't. It appeared that she tried to work on a number of other manuscripts, but she never did publish another book until at the very end, which we'll talk about in just a second. Go set a watchman.
Say goodbye.
Bye now, Craig. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Let me know if we do this again.
Will do. You'll hear. You'll hear from us. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I'm sure you all are aware that Go Set a Watchman appeared just a few years ago. And it turned out that apparently it was the original manuscript that she wrote that was titled To Kill a Mockingbird. But she was advised by her editor to change the whole approach there. So she rewrote and wrote about the childhood experiences of Scout, looking at it from a child's eyes. Then later, this other manuscript was revitalized, and there's a bit of a debate about it. Many people did not feel that it was really something that Harper wanted to have published because it shows Atticus in a different light. It's a kind of an old debate that I don't think we'll resurrect here online, but you'll have to read it and see what you think. So President Thomas Jefferson was apparently a distant relative of Harper's and also of Randy's, I understand.
Tried to X out, that didn't work either.
So Randy and Harper are cousins in a way, far back, I think a number of times removed, but some
Are you gonna
relationship
use
to
a
the
new lunch?
Randolph family. So Randy has a cousinship, he calls it, with Harper. And I was intrigued that Thomas Jefferson trained a pet mockingbird, which would hop around the house and follow him around like a puppy.
I want to jump in here and say Diane is also a cousin of Thomas Jefferson.
I guess I am, yeah. I forgot about that. Thank you, Randy. I'm not going to attempt to read this. This one's kind of hard to decipher. But apparently General Robert E. Lee is Thomas Jefferson's second cousin, twice removed. So, all right. How many degrees is it? 6 degrees of separation? We're all related. Okay. And here we're just, Randy's drawing a little parallel here with the, in the Gray Ghost, there's a hidden post office in the tree. And To Kill a Mockingbird also has a secret tree with a hole in it that they would leave messages and items. That Boo Radley would leave items meant for the Finch children. So some similarities. We know from Harper's own words that she was profoundly influenced by the books, by Seckatary's books. So the books were, I'm sorry, this one is about making the To Kill a Mockingbird movie with Gregory Peck. I have to see that movie again. I haven't seen that lately. But apparently Gregory Peck named his son Harper, and he and Harper Lee remained very close friends. Here's some more pictures from the film. And, you know, we make much of, in our Seckatary books, the message, the non-bullying message. And this quote from To Kill a Mockingbird, you just hold your head high and keep those fists down. No matter what anybody says to you, don't you let them get your goat. Try fighting with your head for a change. So I think that would be a motto that would certainly come from the Seckatary Hawkins books. This was about the time that Watchmen was released. Just some more pictures of Harper Lee. I don't think people usually see pictures of her. She really tried to avoid the cameras. Harper received the American Medal of Freedom from George W. Bush. And Harper wrote to us, she wrote some notes to us over the years as members of the Seckatary Hawkins Club, because she herself was a member for many years. Dear fellow members, it is a delight to be asked to address you on any subject, so here is an address on the subject of innards. Remember that life depends on the liver. Much love, Harper Lee. I still get a kick out of that. So here is, I think, wait a minute, I have one before this. Here is an early sketch of the characters in the Fair and Square Boys Club in 1918. And here is a full color in the 20s. We're beginning to be able to pick out some of the characters there. You can always see Link Lambert in the middle. Lanky Link. Okay. And I was mentioning about the bullying. Again, this is a major theme of the books. Uncle Bob loved children, and he really, I have so admired his very heartfelt philosophy that children and young people should never bully each other and should stick together, help one another in all things. We have the club rules coming up right here. And I don't know if some of you maybe already have these rules posted on your bedroom wall, but always be fair and square. The whole idea of the Fair and Square Club. Randy and I kind of get a kick out of, we see politicians nowadays using that phrase, fair and square, quite a bit. I'm not sure if those are people that have read the Seckatary books, but basic, decent rules for decent living and fairness, charitable compassion on others. Don't give up. Treat others as you would have them treat you. Use common sense. Try to learn something new each day. And stick to your friends and they will stick to you. A friend in need is a friend indeed. So these would be similar philosophy to the Boy Scouts, who were ascendant at that time too. And I think that there's just a beautiful spirit. You can sense the spirituality coming through with all of these rules. Here's just another comic strip, and the newspaper comic strips ran from 1928 to 1934. I like this. This is the concept of how the stories just came tumbling out, and all the different creative. I thought Uncle Bob had an amazingly creative mind and spirit to have created all of these wonderful mysteries. Now, I know not everybody has read every one of the books. I see comments on our club mail that people haven't even had time sometimes to read the various books that we have printed, the club editions, especially the expanded editions, because they're even that much bigger. But each one of the books is so unique, and there's such a good moral story, but without hammering you over the head with it, that I think Uncle Bob had a real skill, a real God-given talent. Now, at one point, there was even a film made called Home Run Hawkins. It was filmed at the Cincinnati Zoo. In part, at one time, there was a little building called the Kemper Log Cabin, and I went out to the zoo and tried to locate it. I think they have moved it now to, maybe it's in Sharon Woods. I will have to track that down. We have a copy of that Home Run Hawkins film, but it's a black and white, and we did run it during a couple of our club meetings that we held at the Behringer Crawford Museum. The clubs that existed in various cities, such as Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Cincinnati, I mean, all over the U.S., were hugely popular and well attended. We do see big numbers mentioned in the many thousands. Events were held locally. There were parades. There were picnics. See, this one says, yesterday was Hawkins Day in Pittsburgh as 12,000 boys and girls celebrated the second anniversary of the Press Club with 3 theater parties. And above, the East Liberty Boys and Girls at the Night Theater, at the Enright Theater, I'm sorry, below the North Side Drum and Bugle Corps of the club is leading a parade. It just staggers me to think how much participation there was by young people. And I think they were, Uncle Bob did the right thing in holding these contests that Craig mentioned, where he wanted to encourage literacy, he wanted to encourage writing, and he just loved kids and would give them an opportunity to write a letter and then would reward those kids with copies of his books. And I think it created a great deal of club loyalty, and they felt as if they knew him personally, as if he was a personal friend to them. But because these numbers are just staggering. As we say, he was the Harry Potter of his day. Here's a little promotional. This might have come from the back of a book. I think Randy would know. This looks like it's from a book jacket. His real name is Robert Frank Schulkers, but the boys and girls call him Seck Hawkins. And he has what one literary critic called the magic gift of catching a youngster's interest and, what's more, holding it indefinitely. He looks pretty young there, doesn't he? And the club had a number of buttons and pins and this is a cute little spinner. Toy kind of. I think some of you must have these. And then there were a number of famous people at that time. Jackie Coogan being one of the early members. And I see that here's a picture on the left there of Coogan stopping by to see Seckatary in the later years. And I did not even know Jackie Coogan's last acting role was as Uncle Fester. Who knew? And then people like Bill Cullen and William Holden. And I think there's another one of, that's Jackie Cooper, I think. Some more actors, even Rin Tin Tin. Gene Kelly and Gregory Peck, who played Atticus, reading the To Kill a Mockingbird script there. Harper Lee with Gregory Peck. Durward Kirby, who was a TV personality on the Gary Moore Show. I noticed that Durward Kirby's family home, where he lived, is on, I think it's Greenup Street in Covington. So it's interesting. We have a number of authors and painters and others who lived very near where Seckatary lived on that. It's called Hellentown in Covington. Harper wrote a letter to Oprah, and she always managed to work Seckatary's name in there somewhere. And then the radio plays were very popular. I think they began in 1926, and this picture is from 1932, the radio show Actors, and Robert Schulkers played the adult roles, and Robert's sister also played some of the female roles, but these kids look like they're having a very good time. So it kind of reminds me of when we're at our club meetings, and we like to do those readings too. There's just so much fun. And one of our avid members, Don Garrett, who is Bonnie Schulkers, Randy's wife's Bonnie Schulkers' brother, built this wonderful replica of the clubhouse. It's been on display in the Behringer Crawford Museum for quite a while. And if you go to Behringer Crawford, you'll be able to see it just has exquisite detail. He has every little point of what the clubhouse might have been like, Seckatary's little writing room, the porch that figures in a lot of the scenes. So it's kind of fun if you go to the Behringer Crawford Museum, and that's kind of our clubhouse headquarters. Although we really love being on the boat for the big meetings. This was a poster we were using for our 2018 anniversary, the centennial. We had an absolutely fabulous time on that boat. And I think I've read that one to you, to Robert F. Schulkers, who gave me so many happy hours with Seckatary Hawkins and Stoner's Boy. She never forgot it throughout her life. And I thought it was pretty amazing that she continued to write to Randy, even though she would not write to many other people. Many would write to her trying to get an interview or get a response, and she just would not respond. So to Randy, yours fair and square, and with all good wishes, Harper Lee. She wrote a few other things, but people waited for quite a long time for another book. Oops. Reader's Digest even did a version of To Kill a Mockingbird, and these are some of the illustrations from that edition. I find it amazing there are so many copies of To Kill a Mockingbird. I kind of haunt bookstores and used bookstores, and you just see so many copies, and you think with the millions of copies that have been sold, why do more people not really realize the connection to the Seckatary Hawkins books? And not only those direct quotes from the last couple of pages, but the entire moral message that she gives. She admits that she was influenced by the reading of the Seckatary Hawkins books. And of course, she stands very much for fairness, fair and squareness, and all of those virtues that we see exemplified in the club. This is Harper's hometown, Monroeville, Alabama. I read somewhere that she said she just wanted to be the Jane Austen of Southern Alabama. So I think she just wanted, meant by that she just wanted to write about real life and real people and tell their stories. And Harper says this in a few places, that is really all she wanted to do. She never expected To Kill a Mockingbird to have the impact that it had. She was totally unprepared, she said, for what people took from To Kill a Mockingbird, how they received it, and how it just blossomed, into this amazing book that has set the standard for writers now for a generation. This is Monroe County Courthouse, Harper Lee's childhood home, as well as Truman Capote's has been destroyed, but plans are underway to recreate the houses close to the originals. I don't know if that's actually happened. I can't read that one, I'm sorry. My screen is a little bit too light. But she refers to Randy as Cuddin' Randy. And this one is pretty funny. Because I am Gaga now, which you probably know, I haven't written. I'm in an assisted living place here where they assist me to live. I'm just about blind, reading machine, etc., but can hear perfectly well on one side. Other than that, it's Hebrews 13:8. Much love, Harper. Hebrews 13:8 was a favorite scripture verse of Harper Lee, and what it is Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Short verse, very compelling, foundational for her spirituality. And she was a woman of few words, really, though an author, really a woman of few words. Dearest Cuddin, she's writing to Randy. Writing, happens here with such, nothing happens here with such regularity that I am ashamed to put pen to paper. It's strictly Hebrews 13:8 in this part of the world. I have not one jot of news, so will hush. You're bored and boring, Cuddin' Harper. I know Randy cherishes these notes. And this was a Christmas card that came late to Randy and Bonnie because Harper's sister forgot to put a stamp on it. Beloved Randy, you are probably far too young to have heard of the story of Little One Eye, Little Two Eyes, Little Three Eyes, and Little Four Eyes. Maybe, I forget if there were four, and the troll under the bridge. Or maybe the troll was somewhere in another tale. At any rate, I can't see this one, were endowed with these eye arrangements, and forget what they did, but I seem to remember a banquet somewhere. I think maybe this may have been the creation of one of the brothers Grimm, or maybe it's a true, real fairy tale. At any rate, are you asleep, Little Two, Three, or Four Eyes, is the key question. My brother called me Little Three Eyes. I trust this makes everything perfectly clear. Trust me not to close it. Looks like close an issue. Much love, Harper. I think it was very hard on her. She was lost vision, she lost hearing, and she, as Randy has said, she was not happy to be going into the assisted living place, but I guess she did not have a choice. Randy sent her some bookends, and my sister has advised me that a package has arrived from you. I told her to open it and use them, but she has not. Therefore, it will be my pleasure some months from now when I'm home to put them in places of honor, one guarding the gray ghost, the other Stoner's boy. And thank you, yours fair and square. Dear Randy, Bonnie, and Scout, was their little dog at that time. At last the Seckatary and I have got together. He and his clone are now on my bookshelves guarding my most precious volumes, among them being several of his creators. The Seckatary is so like his original image, I can't imagine how he was created. Some computer marvel projection, I guess. You have given me something that I shall treasure as long as I live, along with your friendship. Your picture looks very much like I had imagined you to be. Yours fair and square and with gratefulness, Harper. Hope you have a great rest of the year and on into the next. And there the little book ends. Okay. Randy, the old Seckatary, has given such great pleasure to all who've seen him this Christmas, including my great-great-niece and nephew, and he occupies the most prominent place on our living room bookshelves. The work is superb. I notice a China label. Do the other club members agree with me? Thank you so much for thinking of me yet again so generously. What a thing to be rewarded so much in my old age for remembering one of the delights of my childhood. Secretary Hawkins will outlive us all. Yours fair and square, Harper. A few more pictures here. And the very famous saying, a quitter never wins and a winner never quits, which pretty well sums up our club philosophy and pretty well sums up my talk. We're at the end of the slides, and I wonder if, I don't know how many we've still got watching, listening, but anybody have any questions or comments?
Let's give everybody an opportunity, but let me ask you to do this. If you look in the lower section of your screen, over to the right, you will see a thing called reactions. If you click on that, you will see some icons pop up, one of which is raise hand. So if you want to talk, raise your hand, and that way we won't be talking over one another. Just so, why don't we do that? So I see Mark. I think Mark wanted to talk. So go to it, Mark. We'll let you go first.
Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for this presentation. Again, I'm kind of new to this, just catching on. And one question: you're related to Randy on the group, right?
Right.
Are you cousins, brothers?
We're cousins. Randy is the grandson of Seckatary, and,
Yep.
Seckatary's sister, Minnie, was my great grandmother.
Okay.
My
All right.
mom's grandmother. So
Great. All right. Second thing, I am an Eagle Scout with the Boy Scouts. So when I was introduced to the fair and square rules, it looked so familiar. And I know they were sort of existing at the same time. I don't know if one was influenced by the other, but again, like you said, it's a common spirit, and I'm drawn to it. So,
and the
in the
founder of
last,
the Boy Scouts was lived in Covington also. The
right,
founder of
Dan
the Boy
Beard.
Scouts.
Yeah.
Dan Beard. And
yeah, we're the Dan Beard Council here.
we don't know really whether Seckatary ever met Dan Beard.
Right.
Randy
Okay.
might know more about that. I don't.
Well, I'm on the board of the local Boy Scout Council here now, so very
great.
familiar to continue to try to serve. And then finally, at the end, if there's time, I have a couple of pictures of our house and that brochure that talks about, and I can share that on my screen, but I want others to be able to talk.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Mark. So great to meet you.
Yeah, you as well.
We'll talk again, I know.
Okay, that's a good idea. We'll go back to those pictures, Mark, but let's give John Bowe a chance to ask or talk.
I just had the same question that Mark had. How was Randy related? Because he was so prominent in your presentation. How was Randy related? You say a great grandson of
grandson, and Randy had the great privilege of his parents were professional musicians, and they traveled quite a bit. So Randy would often stay with his grandparents, and so he was at Seckatary's knee as a boy, and he was his best bud. And Sec told a lot of stories to Randy that I think came out of the books maybe, or became books or something. But Randy might want to say something about that himself. But he has just great memories of his life with Seckatary and his love that they had for each other, really profound. I unfortunately did not ever get to meet him. I did know my great-grandmother, his sister, so I knew Seckatary's sister, Minnie, but I did not ever meet her brother, unfortunately.
Okay, Randy, why don't you go ahead and say what you want to say?
I just clear up, I lived with Grandpa for several years, from age 4 to maybe the 3rd grade, because my parents traveled so much doing their musical endeavor trying to make their avocation into a vocation, which was semi successful, but not the greatest. But in essence, from those years, Grandpa was my father image. So I spent most of my time with him growing up. That's it.
Cool, cool.
Great, yeah.
All right. Before we go back to Mark, there's a bunch of you aren't showing your faces. So if you want to ask or say something, go ahead. We'll give you that opportunity. But you have to unmute yourself.
Maybe Ken Pfister? And I'm sorry, I don't know Talia. I don't think I know Jan or Talia.
Well, let's give Mark his opportunity to show us some pictures.
Okay, I have 4 pictures and they're, I'm just going to share my screen. I think I can just do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you're going to see me kind of hunting around here. All right, so let's go to my email. Here we go. Can you see this? It says
Oh,
Modern
wow.
Homeways.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the brochure that just days after we moved in, one of the neighbors presented to us and gave us. But this is the house where I live now, but the picture taken in 1931.
My
And
goodness.
this was a sales brochure for the neighborhood, which was fairly new back then. And it cost 25 cents for this. And
Wow.
if you go to page whatever that is, I don't know, a couple of pages in, see in the bottom here, the home illustrated on the front cover of this issue was built by the Myers Y. Cooper Company for Robert F. Schulkers, newspaper writer and creator of Seckatary Hawkins.
Oh, right.
And you can see it was Victoria Boulevard at the time.
Yes.
There's a cement obelisk at the corner of our street and Erie Avenue that says Victoria Boulevard.
Wow.
But the modern street sign says Victoria Avenue, and that's our address at the post office.
Is it still called Kilgore Park?
On our deeds and then our plats,
Oh.
it's part of the Kilgore estate, but nobody really uses that name.
Okay. Just wondered.
Right. So you have to understand at the time, this Hyde Park was sort of the first ring of suburbs of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Cincinnati was formed. You live downtown, you work downtown. And when the trolleys were invented, that allowed transportation quickly by rail in and out of the suburb. And people could then live out of the city and then commute to work. And so Hyde Park was one of the first suburbs. And Myers Cooper ended up being the governor of Ohio, the builder. So he was a ambitious man. I don't know much about him. The company still exists today. They do commercial real estate maintenance, I think. So that's that story. And then I have a picture that Randy sent me right here. So it looks like, Randy, you should be familiar. You sent this to me in an email. But that's about 1933, and I think that's in Randy's house in a picture frame. So it's a couple years later.
Beautiful.
And then the last picture I have is the outside. Oops. See if I can find it right here. There we go. That's the house as it looks today.
Oh, wow.
So my wife and I, we added the window box. We added this courtyard here, redirected the sidewalk. We upgraded the windows to modern windows. So it's a very livable house. There's a gas lamp here. And my wife loves to garden, so there's lots of plants in the yard, and they're constantly moving around. She moves them like furniture. It's funny. But
It looks beautiful, Mark. It looks lovely. I love the window box.
Right. So it's a Tudor revival style. Trying to, cues back in the, I guess, Middle Ages of England, and we love it. So at some point when the time is right, if there is interest in an event here, we'd be happy to host it.
Thank you. We will take you up on that. I promise you. As soon as we get back to returning more to whatever will be the new normal.
And hopefully, Randy, you can make it here and point out all the things inside the house that you used to do. I don't know. It'd be fun.
Well, it's 11:30. I'm sorry for the delay in the start, but I'm sure glad that we had this program. I'm sure that even those of you who are familiar with a lot of what Diane had to say enjoyed hearing it again, and I certainly did. And I really regret not knowing how prolific a writer Schulkers was, because I was limited to the ones at the then the Covington Library, and
Right.
probably I have handled those now valuable books in my youth.
And I should mention, our club actually produced 44 volumes. So there are 44 complete stories that could be read. I mean,
Great.
today was just, we were talking about a specific aspect, primarily about Harper's connection to us, but I think the best thing to do is just pick up, if you have not read any of them, pick up Stoner's Boy and start there.
Yeah.
And that just says it. That'll say it all.
Well, if we had a mug or a commemorative pin to hand you, Diane, we would do so, but we can't. So
My pleasure to do this.
Thanks.
thank you much, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Goodbye, all.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Don't
See you
forget to go
later.
to www.seckatary.com and you can find out a lot more stuff about Seckatary Hawkins.
That's right.
Great.